Boy John Mike, I'm back again today. I'm excited to share with to share with you a over 2-hour video that we have put together on just mixing drums. I'm talking mixing drums from some of the top engineers and producers in the industry. We're talking Cedric Thompson, Yosh, Blass. We got PJ Morton's engineer in there. We got Yaahn Hunter Jr. Heck, I even throw some stuff in there, some things that I've learned just from hanging around these guys over the years. So I'm excited to share this video with you, and I hope you enjoy this content. All right, let's jump in. Thank you for watching.
So what's happening here is this is actually my template. So a lot of the work has already been done for me. So on the kick drum, we have the SSLG channel, and I have it on a really mean preset that I love. I tweaked this preset, but it's giving us this. So if I take that off, it'll sound like this. Turn it back on. So it's just focusing on the kick. So I'm getting rid of the boxiness out of here, around this 200, stuff like that. So we got about 8.2 dB of gain reduction in the boxy area. And then I'm turning up some of the higher frequencies. So we got about 6.6 dB of 3.7 kilohertz. And then we have the top end of the beater. It's about 9.3 dB of, what is it going to tell us? About 8K basically. So that's what's happening with the kick drum. That's why it sounds so focused. The other juicy side about this plugin is the right side. So I'm getting some really good compression out the gate. So we have, let's see, what is it? Yep, that's the release. Let's go to the ratio. So we have about a 5:1 ratio of compression. And then we're backing down, not much, as you guys can see. It's only about -2 dB. So we're not reducing a whole lot. And then we have the expanding area. So what I love about expanding versus gating, expanding gives us a nice smooth transition as the gate closes or as the door closes. It's not like it just slams shut. It's just like a nice close, open. So that's why I love expansion. So that gives us this. So you see it's just real smooth. So that's all on the SSL. So then we have, I know the Rev is waiting on this, the trigger on the kick drums. I didn't need them. I wanted them just because I wanted to have the gospel feel, that modern feel. So on our triggers, we have two of them. We have the Everyday from the Yosh Drum Warehouse. And then let's go over here. And then in combination with that, we have the Nick kit. So I have the Legacy stuff. So if you guys are looking for these, it's just go to the Yosh Drum Warehouse Legacy.
And you'll see the QR code there if you guys want to. Yo, that's thick, bro.
So yeah, I just want it though. So all of that in combination with my kick sounds like this. Just my kick. So it kind of makes the kit 3-dimensional now, like 3D. It doesn't so 1D. And the second reason why I actually added some of these samples is because on my drum mic setup, I only have overheads left and right in the ride cymbal. I don't have a room mic or mics when I did this recording. So I'm playing off of that and saying, all right, I have more of a 2D recording. Samples will make it sound 3D. So same thing on the snare. We have my snare raw. Then we have some Verb on there too. That's Logic for you. And then we have again the G channel that transforms it, makes it sound like this. So you hear how it's coming in and out nice and smooth. That's the difference between a gate being on and an expander. So we have it more on the expansion side. So same kind of thing going on. I slammed this kind of hard, so the ratio is way more intense with 10-to-1 ratio. And then we're squashing this down.
Sheesh.
So we're squashing it down so we could get a nice, nice attack. You know what I mean? So,
jeez.
Yeah, it's a little extreme. People are afraid to make bold moves. I don't know why, but you can make bold moves. Like, you're allowed to do that. Like, if it sounds good, do it.
Yeah.
So then we have the combination snare. This one is more of a squash. Let me see. What is this one doing? I'm curious to see myself now. Oh, this is Squash the Kingdom Come.
Mm-hmm.
With no attack.
Man, you know what's crazy? And you know what really elevates a track? Having the right drums. And speaking of drums, if you haven't checked out Yosh's Drum Warehouse yet, you're seriously missing out. We connected with Yosh, a 7-time Grammy Award winner, and we packed over 600 plus multi-sample sounds that work with any DAW and are perfectly formatted for Trigger 2. We're talking tons of snares, kicks, toms, and so much more. You name it, it's in this sample pack. So whether you're on Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, whatever you got, it's all here. It's ready to take your production to the next level. Seriously, go grab it right now. gospelproducers.com. All right, back to the show.
So what you did right there, you duplicated the snare. This is your main snare. You duplicated it, and then you just slapped the snot out of it with a compressor, basically. You're parallel compressing your snare in just on a different channel, kind of like it's not busting it out to a compressor.
Right.
You duplicate it. So what's the science behind that? Why you would do that versus just parallel compressing it, just sending it out to a bus with a compressor on it? Why duplicate it?
Yeah, I duplicated it. Y'all gonna be mad at my answer. It's just convenient. It's just the convenience.
It's just convenience.
Yeah, I mean, because again, this is from tracking. So I literally just took the snare and just hit boop, duplicated it, and then just
squashed it.
So yeah, but be careful with this with phase. Like don't be oblivious to phase. You can create phase issues. So the one way to bulletproof yourself on phase is go ahead, go to your utility, go to gain, mono, and then just slap it down. Yeah, flip just just in case. But I didn't have any issues on mine, so I didn't need it.
But that's a good point. Sometimes it's just about speed. It's not always about a reason. And I just wanted to probe your mind to make sure that it wasn't anything different, because I do a lot of things like that. Just duplicate it and just move on because you're trying to work fast.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, this template has been law, and this template has been law for any of my gospel sessions. It's more refined now, but it's still the same blood and guts. So that's that. And so then we have 3 snare triggers from the warehouse. Go to the Legacy. We have the Vinny, the Slate, and the Joy. They probably have different names, so you have to listen for them. But these are the Legacy joints. So the first snare is this. Ring.
Yeah, that's that Joey. Yeah.
So lots of ring from that one. Then we have the Joey as well.
Oh, that Joey right there. Yeah. The first one was the Vinny, right?
Yeah, that's Vinny.
Yep.
And then I put my own little sample in there. So all 3 samples give us this. Now it's very low in retrospect to my acoustic snare.
Woo.
I mean, it's majority of my snare that's carrying it. You only hear the ring of the samples, but you hear the attack and the realness from my snare.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is again attributed to a good recording. Because if I take the samples out of my kit, and then we just solo the drums, I mean, we're gonna get a pretty good sound.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's all me. That's
yeah.
You know,
No, that's clean.
So I just, again, style preference. I wanted them in there. I was like, I want that sound.
Whew. But yours is still prevalent. It's still sitting on top of all of that, and you're getting that crack and that ring and that weight from the samples.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it cuts through it because you got what? How many? Well, I know you got like 1,000 other tracks under all of that that's trying to cut through.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, I mean, bro, you know what I'm saying? Like that's light work. So,
jeez.
Yeah, my Chastity, she gave me some light work on this session. Like the BGVs wasn't nothing out of this world this time around. Usually I would have 40 track BGVs.
Right.
So she gave me some light work. So it was pretty easy. So that's what's going on there. Tom's, I have to kill you guys for showing you this after. So I got all of your IP addresses. I got it in my notepad. And I see everybody. So after this, I'm coming after everybody and just take you out. Now on the toms, it's a 3-chord fold. All right. So one good playing. The way I'm hitting the toms is the first thing. I can't express that enough, guys. It's literally how you hit the drum. So first chord of the 3-chord fold, performance. Listen to how the toms are being hit. Even. You can look at the transients and tell.
Yep.
The second thing is the recording. So if I get this into, there we go, reasonable, transient, you can see they're all kind of consistent. Got a good recording. The recording of the toms are good. You see what I'm saying? So that's dry. There's nothing on the toms. That's a little bit of the reverb from the bus, but we can turn that off. There we go. So we're getting a good recording. That's the next thing, and then finally we can get to the mix. So it's how we have to do a whole nother video on how to hit drums. So
yeah, definitely.
It's a science to it, like the touch, and then the plugins will respond to how you played. So we have the SSL G channel. It's going to be a little monotonous, guys. So we got the G channel on the toms as our first line of defense. Now I'm using the G channel because it's giving me the nice, say it with me, expansion. So the expander is working in our favor to add or give us the illusion of we cross-faded each tom after it was hit. Listen to how the fade is on each one as I go across the rack toms. See there? So it's in order of how the drums were hit and they respond. The plugins respond. So I'm using the same plugin on each tom. So a hack for you guys, if you do have the G channel from Waves, a hack for you is start with the rack tom preset. That'll save your life. Now that's not Bible. You will have to tweak it. So I've tweaked it. They give you maximum release on this and they just let it ring loud and proud. Not on this type of record. Maybe on a Dilla record or something. Hip hop, fine. But on this one, no. We want clean, transparent toms. So use the rack tom setting, and then on the floor tom, you can use, for you guys to take home for leftovers, is use the floor tom preset and work from there. This will get you some really good tom tones. So then after that, we go into CLA drums. Well, we have the virtual mix rack, but it's just saturation. Saturation is nice. But after that, then we go into CLA drums. This is why I said I was going to shoot everybody after this, because this is a gem. It's going to do even more work for us to make us sound like pros, and we are pros. So let's hit the space bar on the CLA. Hear that? Now it makes it sound like we're at a stadium, like we just arrived at an award show. So then last but not least, we have the SSL EQ. I went to this because because of all of the other instruments that the drums has to play together with, I had to brighten up the toms even more. So that sounds like this. And you can feel that attack difference. Without it on, it's like getting meaner subtly. Cool. We got the toms. Then the hi-hats. This is fail-safe for me. The virtual mix rack from Slate is a blessing. So I've done the wrong way to do this. Stay with me. You're technically supposed to EQ first and then go into a compressor so the compressor doesn't have to fight. I actually did not do that. I went to a compressor first to compress the whole sound as is. I don't mind this compressor taking in all the heat because I used a pencil mic on the hi-hat and I did a roll-off on that mic. Therefore, I'm already getting an affected sound before it even hit the DAW. So I can go into a compressor first. If I used a SMB or any other type of dynamic microphone and I didn't do a roll-off, then the EQ would be first, but it's not. So compressing kind of hard on the hi-hat. Let's go to where we're grooving. Oh, it's not as hard as I thought. So we're getting a nice amount of compression here. I thought it was going to be more deadly, but it's a template, so it makes sense. And you can hear the compressor working with that snare kind of jumping a little bit. It's kind of like, yeah. It's kind of jumping up, but it's controlling the focus on the hi-hat. Then we have the Neve here rolling off to about 160. This says 135, but 160-ish, 135. Rolling off the low here even more, so it's more focused. So if I turn this off, you can hear more low, and you'll need headphones for this for sure. Turn it on. It just takes away the mud, the focus from the kick drum, and focuses on the hi-hat. That's all that's happening there. So on the overheads, we are in a bus. So nothing is really happening on the channels itself. We're on the overheads bus. So we're going to come over here. And then same approach. I rolled off on my overheads as well. So I went into a compressor first. What's up, sis? Let's load the overheads. So notice I'm getting a good capture of the entire kit. Like just grooving, you can hear and feel the drums. So I rolled off over here on the Neve to about, again, 160. Let's turn this off and let's listen to the overheads. Them overheads sound juicy. Let's go over to where we got crash, crash, and fills and fills. See there? Nice and full. I almost wanted to keep the overheads like that because they sound so good raw, but we got to make space for the rest of the instruments and the sonics of the record, so we did a roll-off. So it kind of makes it sound like the drums are further away, but that works in our favor because our direct signal stuff, the hi-hat, the snare, the kick, all of those are now going to get pushed to the front, and the overheads are going to take a back seat and just focus on the cymbals. So all of that combined gives us this. So you see how it's allowing the direct drums, especially those toms, they're more focused. If you don't roll off as much on your overhead, sometimes they can consume the rest of your drum kit. So you just got to really be intentional about mic positioning and recording.
Man, you know what's crazy? And you know what really elevates a track? Having the right drums. And speaking of drums, if you haven't checked out Yosh's Drum Warehouse yet, you're seriously missing out. We connected with Yosh, a 7-time Grammy Award winner, and we packed over 600 plus multi-sample sounds that work with any DAW and are perfectly formatted for Trigger 2. We're talking tons of snares, kicks, toms, and so much more. You name it, it's in this sample pack. So whether you're on Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, whatever you got, it's all here. It's ready to take your production to the next level. Seriously, go grab it right now. gospelproducers.com. All right, back to the show.
Real quick, let's backtrack to the drum bus. The way to kill those transients coming in like that is by, again, this is a pro hack right here. On your drum bus, and really a lot of your buses, but specifically the drum bus, we are going to put a limiter on the drum bus. And we're going to use this to tame those transients so everything is not out of whack. You can use any limiter you want that has a threshold and a ceiling. But what we're going to do is tame these transients. Now we don't talk about gain staging much and why that's important. This is why. I can barely even put a limiter on the drum. So again, we recorded into a template. So what we're going to do is do some small problem solving. It's not going to take long at all. So on the drums bus, we're going to check these plugins, see what's going on here. We're going to gain stage our way through. Cool. I see what's happening here. No problem at all. So what we could do is, easy way to gain stage is to grab a gain tool. The virtual mix rack has one. Probably passed it. Trimmer. We're going to turn down the drums out of the virtual mix rack going into the pool tech. Perfect. And then we're going to do the same thing for the pool tech. Now we got headroom. This is why gain staging is important.
Mixing is a very, very hard art to master. I know because I've been trying to master this art for several years. That is one of the reasons why I do Mix Mondays. It's a learning environment, and every mix that I do, I learn something new. And I've taken everything that I've learned over the years and we have poured it into our mixing templates. Mixing templates are a great starting place, and we have created several templates that allow you to get up and going quickly, and we have created them for Logic Pro X, we have created them for Pro Tools, for Studio One, for Ableton Live, and so many others. So if you're interested in taking your mixing to the next level, or even just getting started, make sure you check out these links down and below in the description of this video and grab your template today. All right, back to the show.
Actually, of course, this plugin is fine. Now we can check our limiter again to see where we are. This is what I want to see. Nothing. So we can come down. And I'm basically looking for the peak. So right when it starts beeping, just a subtle beep, we doing good. Now we can turn the drums up. See that? Now let's look at the master. Got way more room to play with now. We're not in the red no more. So now we can put our master bus processing back on. All right, so see how that makes a difference by gain staging. So that's really important. We don't talk about that much in gospel mixing.
Man, you know what's crazy? And you know what really elevates a track? Having the right drums. And speaking of drums, if you haven't checked out Yosh's Drum Warehouse yet, you're seriously missing out. We connected with Yosh, a 7-time Grammy Award winner, and we packed over 600 plus multi-sample sounds that work with any DAW and are perfectly formatted for Trigger 2. We're talking tons of snares, kicks, toms, and so much more. You name it, it's in this sample pack. So whether you're on Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, whatever you got, it's all here. It's ready to take your production to the next level. Seriously, go grab it right now. gospelproducers.com. All right, back to the show.
First thing you'll notice on the drums here is that I'm not using the live kick on almost any of the song. Down here I am, but that we'll get there. And most of the song actually ends here. The rest of this is a praise break that we mixed later. But I'm using a sample, and because this isn't the first song on the album that I did, I probably made that decision based on a whole other song. But let's play what the actual kick is and what I was thinking at the time. And just for routing purposes, this is going out the drum sub. There's nothing on the drum sub. So we're hearing this raw as I play it. So my first thought was try to get rid of some of the cymbal bleed on that. This I don't think is doing anything. Ultimately, I felt like this just felt kind of papery and weak and didn't really give me what I was hoping for out of it. It's better with the sub kick, the kick out mic. A lot of times kick outs are really tough, especially in live recordings. Again, I'm doing a lot here to get rid of the cymbal bleed on that. And the bottom line was I wanted something that hit a little harder and was punchier and had a tight kick, tight low end to it. So I picked this, which is a Yosh sample from the Yosh drum. He included it in the drum warehouse. So that is readily available. And it's also a kick I've used for a lot longer than that's been available. Great kick drum. This is where I ended up on that, was muting altogether the live kick. A lot of times I'll blend them together. I'll use the samples for what I need them for, if that's a little bit extra low end or a little bit of punch or a little bit of tick or something on it. In this case, they weren't gelling well together. I needed it to just be solid and crispy and clean and get through. So I ended up just using the sample on it. Not true for the snare, which there's two different snare drums on this one, the side snare and the main snare. The main snare here, or the side snare here, that the song starts with is this. So what I hear initially listening to a drum like that is, okay, why is it a side snare? Like, what are we looking for that's different than the main snare? So if I listen to the main snare, okay, so that's a pretty high, tight snare drum. And this is obviously a very low, kind of looking for some depth, right? So I used this Oxford drum gate on it. And I chose this because, again, trying to get rid of cymbal bleed. But this drum gate is a smart gate that can look specifically for the drums that you want to let it go through, if it's a kick or a snare or a tom, and you can train it to learn the right hits. So you can eliminate things in very tricky situations. The thing I love most about it, though, is this frequency dependent decay time. So you can see where this fundamental tone of the drum is, and we can let a quick decay time up here where the cymbals are and a long decay time down here where the drum is. And so that eliminates a lot of that like that comes through. I actually wanted more beef to it, and thankfully this is one of Yosh's newer samples, but I used this too, and this is literally like my go-to when I need this sound. This is the hit I use. It's called, what is it? Hard BR10 snare wallet one shot, and it sounds like that. Kill the reverb. So it gives me a little bit of the on the top, which I felt like was important. I wanted some sizzle, some snares on that snare. And it also adds even more of that beef and the depth. And so together, I feel like we're maintaining the integrity of what that drum is supposed to be doing. And that's what I was looking for with that sample. I added some verb as well. Just a little bit to that, none of that, and some of this. But it's a wood room. Here, I'll crank it up for you. So that's what that's doing. And in context, so kick and snare together.
Listen, I hope you are enjoying this conversation with John Blass. I got something really quick that I want to show you though. Check this out.
Hey, this is John Blass. You may have seen that I just announced my Gospel Producers mixing class. My intent here is to let you into my thought process, my insights, how and why I do what I do every day to create the best art that I possibly can for clients that I respect so much. I get to work with some really incredible artists, and this is how I think about mixing and music and art and how I get to the finish line with these records. Click the link in my bio or scan the QR code to gain access to this class.
Let's move straight forward to the overheads because we got to get the rest of the drum kit in here. So I've overhead left, right, pretty normal. I am EQing. This EQ literally comes on my template, ducking a lot at 400, and a tiny bit of a shelf that I sometimes kill, sometimes I keep. But basically, here, let's start with just that. All right, so I think that's pretty clear what that's doing. It's this. And that is just cleaning up some of that like roomy, tubby, mid-rangey, I don't know, takes away from the punch of it to me. I'm also doing a little bit of a dip, 3,300 hertz there or whatever. I don't know, something was poking out to me or was trying to make room for a vocal or something there. It was just a little too sharp there. So I pulled that back with a separate EQ just because it was quick and easy. And I'm compressing them, just trying to get more out of the kit overall. And so letting some of the bigger hits get bumped down a bit to allow the whole kit to come up in the cymbal range. Helps get some of the smaller things through. So I'm also using the hi-hat mic, but only on part of the song, where in that front half of the song where the hi-hat was really important, I wanted that up close. So I'm adding that in. So a lot of low end in this, and honestly, it was pretty bright to me as well. So I'm rolling off some of the top end and some of the bottom end. Sometimes that kind of thing feels counterintuitive to roll off the high end of a cymbal. For hi-hats especially, I don't necessarily need them to be super bright, and that can just get in the way of the other cymbals and vocals and things that I want to occupy the high end register. So I'm tenting that a little bit and keeping that down. I'm also, again, compressing to bring up the smaller hits because what I'm looking for there is the groove of the hi-hat. Let's knock down the snare, bleed a little bit, and keep the hi-hats up there. So that's what that's doing. Next, let's move straight to the toms. These are well-recorded toms, no replacement or anything on them, and they sound good, I think. So I use a plugin by McDSP called P606. It's just a parametric EQ. On this Tom 1, for instance, so without any EQ, so what we're getting rid of here, let's see, the best way to show this. Let me just turn this off, turn this off. So if we turn that on, like that's that sound I'm getting rid of. And like I'm getting rid of all of it, right? Like at least a lot of it. And then what I'm trying to do is get some more attack out of this side. So you don't want to go too much on that because it can hurt a little bit, but it can also be really helpful to get some attack out of it. And then also try to get some more of the fundamental, like the boom of the tom, which is what's down here. So generally what I'm doing is adjusting the frequencies, the Qs, and the gains of 3 bands typically on any given tom, so that in general they have that kind of tick, that kind of boom, and not too much of that tubby, roomy thing. So here's like a tom fill with and without EQ. So let's hear, I think that's all the tracks in this beginning section. Let's hear that tom or that drum kit in this area.
Man, you know what's crazy? And you know what really elevates a track? Having the right drums. And speaking of drums, if you haven't checked out Yosh's Drum Warehouse yet, you're seriously missing out. We connected with Yosh, a 7-time Grammy Award winner, and we packed over 600 plus multi-sample sounds that work with any DAW and are perfectly formatted for Trigger 2. We're talking tons of snares, kicks, toms, and so much more. You name it, it's in this sample pack. So whether you're on Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, whatever you got, it's all here. It's ready to take your production to the next level. Seriously, go grab it right now. gospelproducers.com. All right, back to the show. Let's go up in here and we'll play the drums, and I'll show you guys kind of some of the stuff that I did with the drums. So big drums. I love big drums. Y'all know me. So nice big drums, big fat drums, of course. I'm using, let me bring it up on the screen. Of course, I am using Yosh Drum Warehouse on the drums. Of course, why wouldn't I not? You know, this is how you get these big fat sounding drums in here. So I'll just break down. Let's start by just muting the triggers. And I'll take this off for just a second because I'll bring it back up. You can hit that QR code, go back and get that if you need when I pull it back up. I'm gonna mute the triggers. I don't even think these might be triggers. I think I printed them. So these are the raw drums. Then the drummer himself actually sent a trigger. So I think this is his regular snare right here. No, actually, no. This is his regular snare. Which is a really nice bass line for the snare. It sounds really, really good. I believe there was a lot of, let's listen to what the bleed was like on the snare itself. Now this is his regular snare. So So this is one of the reasons why it is difficult. And I stress this all the time. A lot of people say, well, why don't you just turn the snare up? Just turn the actual snare up and use the real snare, right? In which we do bring that in there and it becomes a part of the bass line. But the thing is, when you start, this is my experience. This is not an absolute. I'm not giving you a rule because every record is going to be different. And it all depends on how the drums were recorded themselves. So when you have drums that have this amount of bleed in them, let's listen. Where you can pretty much hear the entire kit in the mic, that's where you have issues and you run into problems with phasing and everything, because the snare is going to go straight up the center, right? So if it's going straight up the center and I start like processing that and bringing that up and really doing some stuff with it, then it starts to bring that information up into the mix, which is in the center. So it starts to mess with your lead vocal. It starts to mess with anything that's coming up the center. And then you end up with, why the drums sound so loud? Why does it sound like the drums are in mono? Well, that's because you got some bleed issues with the drums. Now, I know some drummers that record very, very clean. And you don't have these issues, but typically it's difficult. It's difficult to manage this. And the best way to do it, if you care about your tones, because I feel like I always have to coddle the drummers in these particular cases. If you care this much about your drums and your tones, then you send your engineer samples of your own kit so that he can replace your snare with your snare, that he can replace your kick with your kick. He can replace your toms with your toms. All right. So those are necessary things that have to be done. So with that being said, we brought in, I brought in some triggers. The drummer himself actually sent some triggers. And his triggers sound like this. These are the triggers. No, that's just a duplicate. This is the trigger that the drummer sent himself. And that was cool. And I used that and made that a part of the bass line and actually triggered the other snares off of it. So I added in a few different snares and I printed them all. These are all from Yosh Drum Warehouse. You can get them all in there. And so we ended up with this big kind of drum sound. And then I added in a couple of kicks from the warehouse as well. And it's really big and fat, and it sounds really big and fat when it's solo. But when you put it into the context of the mix, it actually doesn't sound as big. So you see what I'm saying? It doesn't really sound as fat when it's in the actual mix itself, where you got all of this other information going on. So if I'm muting all of my triggers and just relying on the drummer snare itself, this is what it ends up sounding like. So you see where the snare went? The snare just disappeared altogether. So this is where the warehouse comes in and like stacking snares. And so I went on a journey, basically just kind of adding in a snare, seeing what that did to it. So it may have been something, the process probably went something like this. So I would have, we're gonna mute and we're gonna add them in one by one to kind of show what that snare did. So we'll start with the Brett snare, which is a part of the warehouse. I was like, okay, that sounded good. Let me add in the popcorn snare. So that gave me the top, the ta that I needed in there. So now we start adding in snares like the absolute snare that gives it some weight and some body. So you start to hear some of the body come in. Then if I throw in the deep down, it gives it some even more fatter weight. And then finally, I added in a Nashville wallet snare to round it out some more. So you see, you end up with that. Now, it really starts to shine when we get down here to the vamp and everything's driving.
Now this feels like church.
So it was all building out layers with different snares and a couple of different kicks to really help those drums cut through everything that's going on without having to, deal with the bleed and deal with all kind of other issues that may arise if you're just doing those sorts of things. All right. So let's keep moving in with the drums. I'm gonna show you some of the other things that I did with just the drums. And see, when you hear it like that, you think like, oh, this is big fat snare, but a lot of that energy gets sucked up by the rest of the mix. So going into what we did with the drums, I don't really have much going on with the drums, as you can see. You can see here, we don't have anything. Looks like I triggered a couple of the toms. Yep, I triggered a couple of the toms just with tom. This is all from Warehouse as well. I triggered the floor tom and I triggered the tom 3. And that was because of bleed, because what ends up happening, let's show you guys, this is what engineers have to deal with in drums. And then let's just solo the toms bus. Mixing is a very, very hard art to master. I know because I've been trying to master this art for several years. That is one of the reasons why I do Mix Mondays. It's a learning environment, and every mix that I do, I learn something new. And I've taken everything that I've learned over the years and we have poured it into our mixing templates. Mixing templates are a great starting place, and we have created several templates that allow you to get up and going quickly, and we have created them for Logic Pro X, we have created them for Pro Tools, for Studio One, for Ableton Live, and so many others. So if you're interested in taking your mixing to the next level, or even just getting started, make sure you check out these links down below in the description of this video and grab your template today. All right, back to the show. There we go. See that? So you end up with those type issues, like every time the drummer is hitting the kick, every time he's hitting anything, the whole kit is bleeding into the tom mic. And so what you have to do to mitigate that sometimes is replace that. Now, I work with a ton of really, really dope drummers, one in particular that I use on all of my records, and he always sends me samples of his own toms that he used when he was recording the record, the heads, the tuning, everything. So I have his toms that come along with the record so that I don't have to pull something from like a Warehouse or pull something from somewhere else. I can use his actual toms from the record in order to mitigate that. All right. So that's what I ended up doing, was adding in those tom triggers to do that. As far as anything else, the only other thing I did, I love to do this. I love to put a stereo imager on the drums. You have to be careful with these. Go gentle on them. I like this one by T-Rex. It's just very transparent almost. It just adds just enough width to a source without like washing it out, so to speak. So if I turn it off completely, you'll hear the difference. So here's the drums without the imager on it. And let's find a space where the toms are kind of really going. Let's see. Right? So you have that section right there, right? That was without the imager on. So I put the imager on. See how much bigger the drums sound? And those toms kind of got a little bit more definition to them just as well, just by adding that in there. So I love using an imager on the top of my drum bus. VMR is on here, but it's bypassed. So obviously I felt like it didn't serve the record. So there's no top level compression or anything going on these drums, which is really dope. So only other things I did was I cut out some ring in the snare. Looks like I added in a trigger for the rim shot, which comes in this part of the song right here. Which again, the drummer's rim shot was not cutting through the mix without having to do extreme surgery on it. So it's just as simple just to bring in the warehouse and be
Thank you, Jesus.
Because you see how much other space, things that are living in that space. You got claps going on, you know what I mean? You got other stuff that's living in that same frequency range. So it's easy for like something as small and insignificant as a rim shot to just get lost in this space.
Thank you, Jesus. A new mercy.
So you see what I'm saying? You want to make sure that you kind of get that going. So triggers here. I put the SSL channel on the hi-hat. Nothing crazy there. Looks like I just used the hi-hat preset and just kept moving. If it sounds good, it sounds good. There's no need to mess with it. Trigger, I told you guys I triggered the toms. Now here's some other buses that I have going on here. CLA drums on the toms. These are my settings for that. Nothing crazy. Just playing around with that to get that sound that I wanted out of the toms. Followed that up on that same bus with just the EQ right there. I guess it was some frequency I wasn't liking right there, so I dipped that out. Then running that into the drum verb. That's just a send from the toms into the drum verb. Cymbals, got VMR on here, a little bit of the SSL channel, and just this FG41, just like a compressor, just some and it doesn't see that it's really doing anything. It's probably just there to catch some stray transients. Infinity EQ, I threw that on, cut out a lot of the, low end, brought down a dip on the cymbals, some harshness, then parallel compression on the drums. Got this running through this. I just like the way this sounds. It's like this Waves, what is this, the TG12345. This is one of those Abbey Roads plugins. It just sounds really, really good, really musical, and it gives some really transparent compression. But I'm busting parallel compression into that, busting the drums into that. And then the drum verb is just simply the Waves IRL. And, REQ is just there in case I needed to EQ some stuff, but don't look like I did anything to it. Just running it strictly through that, which produced the drum verb that you hear. And that's the only verb I have on the drums outside of what's coming out of CLA on the toms. The side stick situation, what I did was I cut a section out right here of the snare top, and I just dropped it down to a clean track right here. And then just added in our session snare side stick. That was the one that just kind of stuck out to me for the most part during when I started working. And the one that just kind of worked. And I just dragged that track down there and just triggered it, basically. That's what I ended up doing with that. The kick itself was this. This is the kick. That's the original, which is nice and punchy. But I layered it with a couple of my kicks. Just to give it some more weight. Because again, it's a dense mix, a lot going on. so I probably just wanted to touch it.
A new mercy.
So I turn it off. So you can see that's all it is. And those are just a couple of kicks out of the warehouse. I can't tell you which ones at the moment without going back to a previous save. And that is the drums, all right? Man, you know what's crazy? And you know what really elevates a track? Having the right drums. And speaking of drums, if you haven't checked out Yosh's Drum Warehouse yet, you're seriously missing out. We connected with Yosh, a 7-time Grammy Award winner, and we packed over 600 plus multi-sample sounds that work with any DAW and are perfectly formatted for Trigger 2. We're talking tons of snares, kicks, toms, and so much more. You name it, it's in this sample pack. So whether you're on Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, whatever you got, it's all here. It's ready to take your production to the next level. Seriously, go grab it right now. gospelproducers.com. All right, back to the show.
Here's a little quick tutorial on how to use these samples with Slate Trigger. First, if you watched my video on recording, you'll know that I usually created a trigger track for my snare drum and my kick in order to trigger easily with Slate Trigger. But you can actually do this off of the original snare. It works really well. I'm just really particular and make sure that every hit's in there perfectly, and it's easier to trigger. So the way you start is you open up your Slate Trigger and you go to the browser and you look for Yosh Drum Warehouse, which you have to put in there. That's a whole nother story, and John Mike's going to tell you how to get it in there. It's not hard at all. And so on this particular song, or this drum track that I've been listening to, the snare's a little weak. So I'll show you what the track sounds like with no samples or anything in it. It sounds pretty good. I added a little bit of top end of the snare, and there may be a point where I duplicate the snare and compress one of the snares and add some verb and stuff, but right now I just want to show you how Slate Trigger works. So I would open up Trigger and go to the browser and open up Yosh Drum Warehouse, open up the snares, and in this case I'm going to use one of the ones that's called Session Snare, and I'm going to use the one with Session Snare with rim, and I'm going to dump it in the first two slots. And the reason is because when I go over to the next page, which is called triggering, I can have a dry snare and I could have just room only snare, and I can also have options of dry, snare with overhead, snare with room, snare with room only, snare room only. In this case, I'm just going to mess around with using this dry snare with the overheads mixed in with it, and then I can control the level of the room sound, and it'll sound like this. And mainly I'm using it to get the ambience without adding reverb, because I like that natural tone of the ambience of this snare. And I could turn up more room like that, depending on how it fits in the track. I'm not sure yet. We're just kind of analyzing the overall drums right now. And then if I felt like maybe that's a little too thin and I want to add some more bottom, I might look for another snare. And I know that there's a snare called Nashville Snare, which has a little bit of thickness to it. So I'll create another trigger track right here, and I'll go in the snares, find the Nashville Snare, and I like the one with the rim, so I'll drag this down, and I'll go back to triggering. We have dry with overhead, dry with room, And it sounds like this. And I'm mixing these together. And I added a little more low end to it. So right now I'm listening blind without listening to the whole track, but I kind of know what the whole track sounds like. So I know that this combination is going to sound fairly nice inside this track. We've got the original snare. We've got a snare that has a nice tight high end snap to it, and then another snare that has some low end, and I'm going to mix them together. And I'll decide the relationships later as I'm listening to the whole track. I'll start blending these back and forth until I get the feel that works the best for this particular tune. So once you get a sound, it's easily saved in Trigger, and I've actually saved some of these settings already, so I can go in here and look, and I actually have what I call Yosh snare, Nash snare, and I can just call it up, and I have it saved, and if it works on another song, it works on another song. If it doesn't, we'll try another one. And I've saved this one over here. This one's called Session Snare, and easily recallable. And there we go. And now, obviously, I can change the room tone, which I think works pretty well right about there. But I can't play you this track because who knows who it is. Might be somebody famous. It might be one of John Mike's productions.
Man, you know what's crazy? And you know what really elevates a track? Having the right drums. And speaking of drums, if you haven't checked out Yosh's Drum Warehouse yet, you're seriously missing out. We connected with Yosh, a 7-time Grammy Award winner, and we packed over 600 plus multi-sample sounds that work with any DAW and are perfectly formatted for Trigger 2. We're talking tons of snares, kicks, toms, and so much more. You name it, it's in this sample pack. So whether you're on Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, whatever you got, it's all here. It's ready to take your production to the next level. Seriously, go grab it right now. gospelproducers.com. All right, back to the show.
I have 2 kicks here. And so what I did was I triggered another one here to also make up kick 2. I gated the first one and then committed that, so there's no noise in it at all. And I'm sending the kick to a bus here, and basically all I'm doing here is the boost here, and I'm doing a cut. I'm doing a cut here as well, which is around the 400 range or so, just to kind of take out some of that muddiness there. And I have another boost here, which is at 8K or so, and these are my boosting cuts here. So, and I'm also sending this to a generator, a signal generator, and so my approach here was to create like a kick sub, if you will, and to do that, I'm sending this kick bus to what I call a kick sub aux, and I labeled it as that so I know what it is. But I'm sending it to this particular bus as well, and I pulled up a signal generator here that I have at 60 hertz, and I gated it. I put up a C1 gate, and you'll notice that it's of course it's triggered when the kick hits. that again, that's basically, you know, to add a little subharmonic there to the kick, and that was in this template. Now I do the same thing in my mixes now, but I use a what's called Boom from Plug-in Alliance, and it basically and I normally always set it to 100 or so, and so it makes life easier for me now. But same approach. Okay, I normally like to have my bass close to the kick as it relates to the way I'm looking at my tracks. So up under kicks, the next thing that I normally approach is my bass going up against my kick. So here, what I did was I duplicated the bass, and I started to actually do some processing on this one, but I left it raw on the original bass itself, duplicated that and pulled up UAD's 1176, you know, and just to add a little more presence there and tame it as well. So that's so you can hear the difference there. And I'm sending that down into our bass, you know, to add a little more grit to the bass as well. And again, I'm going after that nostalgic sound, you know, the old classic sound. So, and to be able to kind of keep that at a certain volume, you know, so it wouldn't go down below. I didn't necessarily want to bring out another compressor, but this is kind of what it does as well with the max volume. So I pulled that up as well, you know, to keep it at a certain threshold. And here with the snares, let's take a listen at the snares right quick. Okay, so there was a few things I did here. This is the, let me take the gate off here. So you can hear that old classic snare there. So here, if you notice, there are two snare tops. So the approach here was there was a additional mic added on the snare as well, and I processed that one differently in terms of the EQ. So I had a 57, and actually because all my other mics were already being used, I pulled out a 414, and I processed that pretty heavy, you know, and added a little more EQ as well going into it. And actually, as a matter of fact, I actually think I ran that through the 737. Actually, most of the time I'm using 737 for bass. You know, sometimes I would do vocals, but I actually ran it through here to capture this.
Mixing is a very, very hard art to master. I know because I've been trying to master this art for several years. That is one of the reasons why I do Mix Mondays. It's a learning environment, and every mix that I do, I learn something new. And I've taken everything that I've learned over the years and we have poured it into our mixing templates. Mixing templates are a great starting place, and we have created several templates that allow you to get up and going quickly, and we have created them for Logic Pro X. We have created them for Pro Tools, for Studio One, for Ableton Live, and so many others. So if you're interested in taking your mixing to the next level or even just getting started, make sure you check out these links down and below in the description of this video and grab your template today. All right, back to the show.
Snare bottom, of course, here. And to add a little attack, I add some triggers as well. I use trigger 2, and I pulled up some sounds. Again, also thanks to Yosh warehouse drum sounds. Again, that another shout out to John Mike. John Mike is all over the place. So shout out to John for these sounds. So I pull from those sounds to add some attack to the snare, which is and I pulled up 2 instances of those, which is this and one, in which they all make up. And so I sent them to this Q8. Nowadays, I'm kind of going to the EQ with a fab filter, actually. But on this, I pulled up the Q8 from Waves, and you can see here some of the boosts and cut. I'm doing around 200, about 3 dB of gain here. Here, I'm right at about 3K here. A boost there, and right at 8K. I'm sorry, 8K. I did quite a bit of boosting here, about 9 dB of gain here, and that gave me that. Hi-hat, I really didn't do anything to. Just panned that again. Tom, two toms here, so there was really not much work to do there. Okay, and then I just ran those into their own aux or bus as well, EQ'd them, and just did a little notch here around 5K or so, and added a LA 2A here. Overheads. Basically here. I have the C4 to do some dipping here, if you notice here. Without it, it's I wanted to tame some of that high end on it as well. And sometimes what I'll do as well, if there's too much noise or stuff that's inside of the overheads as well, sometimes I'll bring in at a certain point, some samples of cymbals for crashes as well. So you'll notice here at this one spot here, I bought this in, and that was just to kind of have something else alone to add sustainability there at that point. Okay.
Man, you know what's crazy? And you know what really elevates a track? having the right drums. And speaking of drums, if you haven't checked out Yosh's Drum Warehouse yet, you're seriously missing out. We connected with Yosh, a 7-time Grammy Award winner, and we packed over 600 plus multi-sample sounds that work with any DAW and are perfectly formatted for Trigger 2. We're talking tons of snares, kicks, toms, and so much more. You name it, it's in this sample pack. So whether you're on Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, whatever you got, it's all here. It's ready to take your production to the next level. Seriously, go grab it right now. gospelproducers.com. All right, back to the show.
Let's listen to the drums soloed. I did do a good bit of sample replacing on here with some different samples. Of course, as you can see, I auditioned a whole bunch of stuff. Sometimes I blend. You see I got a whole bunch of different variations, 70s kick, rock god, new kick, some things that were made by me, some things that I found from other places or other people. But the kick drum, that one I did like, which was titled The Mint Kick Dry. I didn't commit it because sometimes I go back and forth, but I added a little Vogue on that joint, you know, for those of you who know that's Voice of God, which is just basically some sub-harmonic stuff, man, to add that extra bottom to it. Here go after the bridge, going into the last chorus and then into the vamp, give y'all a sample. So one thing I do like to try to make sure I attack with the samples is I always try to make sure that if I do replace it, it's gotta be in the same vein, usually tuning and stuff as well, but honestly giving me what I was lacking if I couldn't make it up in a plugin or in a piece of hardware. So we got this stuff. Of course, no sample replacing on the actual cymbals or anything of that nature. But let's talk about the toms. So the way I treat my toms, I usually group my toms. As you can see on this one, I actually didn't even clean it up like I would normally do because he wasn't as busy and he had a lot more control. That top one was a committed tom, the first rack tom. The rest of them wasn't really cleaned up and stuff like that, although I am using a little bit of trigger. I do like the vibe that Chris Lord Algae, I think that they honed in on some stuff. From time to time, I'll throw this on my toms bus. It's not always on the tom setting, actually. Sometimes I actually use it on the kick setting. It's very weird, but it does something to it that adds a little bit of, you know, like body to the drums. A lot of people really be thinking that this compressor on here is just a straight up compressor, but it really does some parallel magic. So that helps bring some of that body out the toms. What's next on here? New joint that I've been really dealing and liking and actually digging into, which is emulation of a 1073 by Blackbird. The Blackbird console by Kit Plugins, I'm sorry. I use this a lot now for the saturation, for the harmonics really that it introduces into it. Matter of fact, let me see if I can find a section in solo just those times. So, you know, you probably be able to hear this right quick, what is happening on here, what it does. I'll bypass it and then put it back in. Let's find a little section that we can loop right quick for toms. So let's take this. All right. So, but putting it in, it just adds a little bit more body and that harmonic information to it, you know what I'm saying? And I did boost up a little bit on the top, bring a little top in there as well. Let's see what else I threw on the toms. Let's see, probably just a regular Pro Q. Yep, normal stuff, just to tame it a little bit more. I didn't really do no side chaining, no extra like stuff on there. Cymbals, I always do my metals usually together as well, which this one, the recording, it was clean as far as overheads and hi-hats. So all I did was just like some bus EQing and stuff to it, which I usually go to with the Mac DSP, which I really like. This version, I think the latest version, whatever it is. Nothing really heavy. Because of this record, I wanted way more of the body to not be in the overheads of the snare and of the toms and stuff. I rolled off some of that low end and put a little bit more brightness on it. Let's see, and after that, probably some more. Oh, Shadow Hills, yo. Shadow Hills. It's just kind of close to the setting I normally used at this other studio that I used to work out of. It was just like my go-to compression for overheads. All of that stuff is sent down to my drum bus, which has some glue on it, the bus compressor from the SSL. I usually go between the bus compressor and, oh, that's Pro Limited, it came from the producer itself and not being used. But I don't really hit the drum bus as hard sometimes, but this record, I think I actually kind of, just kissing the needle. Kissing that needle, you know what I'm saying, with a slow attack.
Mixing is a very, very hard art to master. I know because I've been trying to master this art for several years. That is one of the reasons why I do Mix Mondays. It's a learning environment, and every mix that I do, I learn something new. And I've taken everything that I've learned over the years and we have poured it into our mixing templates. Mixing templates are a great starting place, and we have created several templates that allow you to get up and going quickly, and we have created them for Logic Pro X. We have created them for Pro Tools, for Studio One, for Ableton Live, and so many others. So if you're interested in taking your mixing to the next level, or even just getting started, make sure you check out these links down and below in the description of this video and grab your template today. All right, back to the show.
And then for this record, I went ahead and put a limiter on here. I don't normally put a limiter on drums. This record called for some reason, it worked. You know, sometimes you got to push that that envelope. And then from there, we wanted it to feel bigger, of course. So I have a few plug-in options that I like to dive into. The main one I actually used was this company, 7 Heaven Professional, which is basically like a Percasti emulation. So I used the room. It's called the Fat Chamber. It really sounds pretty much exactly like the unit when I used to use the hardware. It's really good. So I'm gonna play this. Let me put the drums in solo again for you. Play a little bit with it on, and then I'll take it off. So that's with the reverb in. Muting it. You know, adds that life to it, make you move a little bit. Other reverb I used was the AMS, old school, the RMX 16. I believe I have it on the hall setting. Yeah, the hall setting. And it just adds this life. It's something about that, like, especially when you're dealing with like the big rock drums. Like the AMS joint is, the RMX 16 is special, you know, especially if you're looking like that old Lynn drum vibe. That's like one of their go-tos that they went to for like their reverb and stuff like that. So it just made sense for me to dig into that and bring this record to life with that.
Man, you know what's crazy? And you know what really elevates a track? Having the right drums. And speaking of drums, if you haven't checked out Yosh's Drum Warehouse yet, you're seriously missing out. We connected with Yosh, a 7-time Grammy Award winner, and we packed over 600 plus multi-sample sounds that work with any DAW and are perfectly formatted for Trigger 2. We're talking tons of snares, kicks, toms, and so much more. You name it, it's in this sample pack. So whether you're on Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, whatever you got, it's all here. It's ready to take your production to the next level. Seriously, go grab it right now. gospelproducers.com. All right, back to the show. So listening to this track I have right now, I'm using samples on the snare and it sounds like this. So as you can hear, like I said, it sounds a little sterile, but if I bring in these tracks right here, and I'm gonna show you what I did in just a second, it sounds like this. So now you can hear the life in the snare, and it doesn't sound snare. It actually sounds like those were the natural drum sounds. Let me show you how I did that. So I just duplicated the snare top completely, and then I added a compressor to it, just a regular 2A, and I'm just compressing the snot out of it, and it sounds like this. So still sounds a little sterile, right? But you can hear more of the ghost notes start to come up because of what was being played on the top. But where the sauce is really on the snare bottom track. So we got the snare bottom here because it's reading those bottom snares, the actual snare, which is on the bottom of the snare, and it's actually reading that. So I did the same exact thing. I just dropped another 2A on it, and we compressed it at the same thing. I just copied the settings, and now when you bring that in, so in a sense, what I'm doing is basically parallel compressing a snare. It's almost like the same concept of parallel compression, but you're duplicating the snare top to get some more body out of that snare. And when you compress it, it kind of smashes it, and it brings the quiet stuff. Makes the loud stuff softer. It makes the soft stuff louder. It's like you're closing the ceiling, you're squashing it, and you're pushing out more sound. So we're bringing up those rudiments a whole lot more on the snare top, and then we're doing the same thing for the snare bottom to bring it up in the mix. Man, you know what's crazy? And you know what really elevates a track? Having the right drums. And speaking of drums, if you haven't checked out Yosh's Drum Warehouse yet, you're seriously missing out. We connected with Yosh, a 7-time Grammy Award winner, and we packed over 600 plus multi-sample sounds that work with any DAW and are perfectly formatted for Trigger 2. We're talking tons of snares, kicks, toms, and so much more. You name it, it's in this sample pack. So whether you're on Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, whatever you got, it's all here. It's ready to take your production to the next level. Seriously, go grab it right now. gospelproducers.com. All right, back to the show. I want to give you a really dope, quick trick on how you should go about replacing toms, a good way to do it, so to speak. Now, the best way to do it, of course, is to grab Yosh's Drum Warehouse. Link is down in the description, shameless plug. But I'm going to show you a really cool way to replace toms if you can do this. If not, then you're going to have to use more extreme measures, but this is a really dope way to do it. So let me show you this real quick. Okay, so I'm working on mixing these drums here, and one of the issues I'm having with this floor tom mic is that there is a cymbal bleeding into the drum mic. So whenever the drums are played, this is kind of the stuff that I get. So you hear that tat. Let's listen to it. Let me just solo just the floor tom here. Right here. So you hear he's hitting the cat, right? Cat. He's hitting the cymbal and the snare at the same time, but it's bleeding into the floor tom. The issue with gating it, yes, you could gate it, but the issue with gating it is it can, I've tried that. That doesn't work. I'm going to show you a dope way to replace the tom where it sounds more natural, because sometimes if you bring in a sample from another place, it doesn't always match the toning and the tuning of the floor tom or the particular tom that you're trying to do. You can go and do some work, but here's a really dope way that I solve these type problems when I'm working. So I found this little clip right here. Just the tom where it's clean, right? And then what you're gonna want to do is of course export that out. Now I'm in Pro Tools. There's different ways you can export that out. I already put the fade on it. I already cut it and cleaned it the way that I wanted it, so it sounds clean. And so what you can do is, when in Pro Tools here, there's a little thing here that shows the clip, and I can actually click on it, right click, and then just hit export clips as files. And I can export that. So after you've exported it, what you're going to want to do is duplicate this track completely. And you can do that whatever DAW in. I'm not going to duplicate it. I've actually already duplicated it, so I'm not going to duplicate it again, but duplicate that track, right? Throw trigger in on that particular track. And then you're going to import that floor tom that you exported in, right, into your trigger folder, and then bring it in here. So now you can see it in there.
And what I'm going to do now is go to the offending parts. And as you can see, I've already kind of done some of this work. And what I've done is done some kind of cutting cut, copy, and pasting. Well, not really pasting, but just cutting the toms up into the offending places where I was really hearing that cymbal bleed into the tom mic. And I've just cut it out from the main track and then brought in the sampled tom here in the front place. So it ends up sounding like this by itself solo. Because Trigger is triggering it. It's triggering those transients. Right? So it sounds a little funky by itself, right? But when you bring it into the context of the actual drums, this is what you end up with. So you see what I'm saying? Versus, so let's bring it in context again so you can kind of see what's going on here. So versus this, so if I turn off the trigger, bring in this, I just want to bring in this one section back in again and listen to it again. Listen to the drums. See, that bleeds in, so you can hear it there. But now, bringing that back and bringing this back in. Now let's listen. So that's a great way to replace your tom tracks or snare tracks or any tracks like that where you got a real offending kind of bleed that you want to get rid of, because those little things show up in the track and you're listening. Because when I was listening, I can't play because this song is not out yet. I cannot play the full audio of it. But when I was mixing it, when that snare and that cymbal was hitting on that part with the toms, it was just horrible. It sounded like a clap stack. That's what it sounded like but I knew that's what it was. It was bleed coming from the toms. So it just sounded weird when, you know, the full context of the track. So I had to go in and do these little things to clean up. Now, if you don't have, you can't find a clean hit of the tom, then you're going to have to do something a little bit more extreme and maybe replace the tom altogether. And when you do that, a lot of times you have to replace all of the toms to get some consistency. You have to replace them with using something like Yosh Drum Warehouse, shameless plug again. You would have to replace all of the toms to get consistency across them all. Otherwise, you're going to hear a do. Something's just totally different, right? So this is a quick fix that you can do.
Man, you know what's crazy? And you know what really elevates a track? Having the right drums. And speaking of drums, if you haven't checked out Yosh's Drum Warehouse yet, you're seriously missing out. We connected with Yosh, a 7-time Grammy Award winner, and we packed over 600 plus multi-sample sounds that work with any DAW and are perfectly formatted for Trigger 2. We're talking tons of snares, kicks, toms, and so much more. You name it, it's in this sample pack. So whether you're on Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, whatever you got, it's all here. It's ready to take your production to the next level. Seriously, go grab it right now. gospelproducers.com. All right, back to the show. So we got this song. So I got some drums on here. And I've done a little bit of work here, just some EQ stuff, nothing really crazy. I got this silencer thing. So we got the drums. I'm gonna jump here to the vamp here. And then we're gonna pull up Trigger too, because we have these set up to where they work inside of Trigger. And you can literally load these files straight into Trigger and go to the browser. And I got Yosh Warehouse, right? So what we're going to do is, I don't like replacing drums. I like layering drums. So what I'm going to do is, we'll start with the kick, right? So I have a kick in and a kick out. Let's see what they sound like. Kick in sounds like this. That's cool. And the kick out sounds like this. It doesn't sound like anything. Oh, because I got Trigger on there. So this kick one, which is the kick in, is really egregious, but I also got most of my transients from here. So I'm going to put this over here. And let's go in here to the browser. And let's find, I'm going to go into the legacy. There's this kick called a very fat kick. Sounds like this. Oh, we got to turn it on. Duh. Sounds like this is what this sounds like. And so what we'll do is just kind of bring all right, got that in there. Let's see. That's the original. All right, let's see how that. All right, I kind of like how that sounds. Then what I'm gonna do is throw an API 550B on there. Is this stereo? It should be mono. Throw mono on there. There's a preset I like on here on kick that just always does it for me. I think it's just called Bass Drum 3. Yep. All right. So we got that in there. And then we're going to go to the snare. And then what I'm going to do with the snare is I'm actually going to just duplicate the snare. This actually works in audio. It doesn't work on MIDI in Studio One. So I'm going to duplicate the snare. And then we're going to pull in a couple of things just to make the snare cut. Because when I pull it in the regular mix, so it's in there, but it just doesn't cut. You know what I mean? It just doesn't cut the way that I want for it to cut. So we're going to build this out. And let's see what we got in here. We'll go some stuff from volume 2. There is a snare called the popcorn snare that I really like. Sounds like this. Really gives some pop to it, right? That's without it. That's with it. It just adds a little bit of pop. And then what I'll also do is add in another legacy snare that Yosh has probably used on every record that he's ever done. And it's a snare called the Brett snare. That is on Kirk Franklin's record. That's on Tamla Mann's record. That's on everybody's record. This sound. then we blend it. You know what I'm saying? We're still trying to preserve the top of the snare, the regular snare, but we want to get that in there. So next, what I'll do is bring in another joint. I think it's called, I'm going to use the BR10. This is not that one. It's another one. I think it's everybody's favorite, but I'm going to show you something dope. So these are multi-samples, and you can choose to use the one with overhead. So even with the popcorn snare, I can go grab it with overhead. That's with the overhead. And then this is with the room. It's the room in there, or I can just go dry. But I like with overhead. And then this is with overhead, but I'm going to go room only on this. And we'll bring it up. So that gives me a triggered snare that sounds like this. Right? Starts to sound like a gunshot, but that's going to help it cut through the mix without having to even use reverb. Now let's hear that in the mix. So you hear how it's starting to cut through the mix a little bit more. And this is not the full mix, but you can hear the drums start to cut through a whole lot better. So if I turn off the triggers, so you see what I'm saying? It makes a little bit of difference. This is how you actually blend and mix drums and be able to blend them up. And so I would duplicate another instance, and maybe we want to make the snare sound a little bit bigger. So what I would do is go and grab the room from this, and then I'm going to grab one more snare from volume 2. I'm going to grab the absolute snare. And put it in here. And then what we'll do is go room only. So these are just room only snares. So now I can take these. So you hear I starting to cut through, and I haven't even added in compression. If I, took these snares and then just grouped them into a bus channel, we call this snare, because that's typically what I would do in a mix. Give myself a snare bus, make sure that they're all routed to their bus, right? And then I would easily just grab something simple like a CLA 2A, right? So I want you to hear the difference even between the kick. So if I have the kick in. So y'all hear the kick punching through, right? If I turn off the triggers on the kick, no triggers on the kick. Triggers on. Then if I turn off the snare triggers. No triggers. Let's bring them back in. Night and day. A song I did about 5 years ago. I got to revisit that. I might want to remix that on the live stream. But that's pretty much like that's pretty much how I would use samples and how I use samples to like mix track and dial in a song. And as you can see, I don't really have much going on the drums. I don't have like 50 plugins. I don't even got anything on the drum bus yet. If I was mixing it, I probably would go ahead and put in something on the drum bus. But as you can see, I'm able to take a drum mix from, let's again take the triggers off. Triggers, we'll mute these triggers and we'll bring in just a regular snare. This is what the drums sound like with no triggers. Then this is what they sound like with the triggers on. Just way more big, bombastic sounding drums, and then it sounds like gunshots when you hear it solo. But when you put it in the context of the mix, so you hear how like it really adds to the ambiance, and that is how you can use Yosh Warehouse to up your games in drums and make them sound good. And I was able to dial that in, and if I wasn't talking through it, I could probably dial that in like 2 or 3 minutes, just literally duplicating the track and blah, 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 blah. And I can have a really dope drum sound. Man, you know what's crazy? And you know what really elevates a track? Having the right drums. And speaking of drums, if you haven't checked out Yosh's Drum Warehouse yet, you're seriously missing out. We connected with John Yosh, a 7-time Grammy Award winner, and we packed over 600 plus multi-sample sounds that work with any DAW and are perfectly formatted for Trigger 2. We're talking tons of snares, kicks, toms, and so much more. You name it, it's in this sample pack. So whether you're on Logic, Ableton, Pro Tools, Cubase, Bitwig, whatever you got, it's all here. It's ready to take your production to the next level. Seriously, go grab it right now. gospelproducers.com. All right, back to the show. So first thing we're gonna do is take a listen to this record.
So one of the first things we're going to do, we're going to deal with it very simply. We're going to try to use gates. We're going to try to not replace anything. We're going to try to start with using the gate. So we'll start with the snare, for instance. But we're going to dig over here. And let's turn this on. And I like to use Slate drum gate. All right, and that cleans it up. That cleaned up some of the bleed for us. We're gonna do the same thing over here for the snare bottom as well. We'll add in that drum gate, Slate drum gate, and we'll just use the same preset just to keep things good. And the way this works is it's a threshold. Anything below that level right there is getting cut off. You can play with your release a little bit. So that feels good. Let's keep it moving. Now I want to kind of go straight to the next problem, which is this this floor tom, to see if we can do anything with this to make this feel better. I kind of got it on default, but let's go to tom bleed. I always do natural, see. It's mainly the cymbals that mess it up and the feels that mess it up. So we'll go straight to a part that's really active, which is this. Listening, I'm counting the tom hits that I'm hearing. So that pretty much cleaned it up. Now that's the trial and error, the tedious part of it, but let's see if it translates in the actual mix itself. Right? So you hear it, but of course you're losing the body of the tom. So we're going to try to mitigate this and make the snare and all of that stuff feel good, utilizing samples from Yosh Warehouse, Trigger 2, all of that stuff like that to make this drum thing come to life. It's not that we're trying to replace the drums totally. We're really trying to layer them to help them fit in the context of the mix. All right. We're going to pull something from the warehouse. I've got a snare in here. It is the Brett snare. That's also in our legacy pack. Let me see how that sounds though. Let's pull it in just with that. That's with it. All right, so we're gonna drag in another snare here. We're gonna put it here on Snare Trigger Snare 2. And these are a couple of other, we call them the popcorn snares. Let's get into a space where it's really moving here. I'm really looking now to add some weight to the snare so it really cuts through the mix. I like our wallet snares. So I'm digging that. I'm digging that vibe. The way we have our samples set up, you can actually drop down and choose whether you want the room, the dry sound, or the room only. I like to blend the room and the sample itself in to get that. And then we just kind of threw in the Nashville wallet snare for that nice, tight, dampened snare, and it makes the snare feel tight. Now let's move on and let's deal with these toms here and see what we can do to make this feel a whole lot more natural. So here's a pro tip when it comes to recording drums. As the engineer, as the producer, or even as the drummer itself, you want to make sure that you get isolated hits of each one of your drums. All right. As you're recording, as you're doing that, after you finish, go all the way to the end of the session, and just hit each particular drum by itself. Hit it at multiple velocities if possible, but you want to get samples, isolated samples of your toms, isolated samples of your snare, isolated samples of your kick. Then when we're mixing, it makes it 100% easy for us to be able to take what you've already recorded, your tones, the tones from the session, and replace them in situations where you have bleed, extreme bleed, like I have in this particular record that I'm working on. So it allows us an easy way to basically replace drums. Now, this particular record, they didn't do that. So I'm going to have to use something from my sample arsenal and hopefully make it work. Let's dig in deep here. We're going to go here and let's see, let's find something. We're going to go into volume 2 toms. So I got to find something that matches closer to what's already on the record. We can tune it, but. And then I definitely need to turn off my gate. That would help. Let's try this one. So the context is trying to make sure that you make it fit inside the context of the mix. It may sound funny, a funky solo, but can you tell when it's in the context of the mix? And in some cases, you have to replace all the toms when it comes to situations like that in order to get the matching. And I might have to do that. I personally need to do a little bit more listening to make sure that's what I want to do. First, listen at glance without really scrutinizing it a whole lot. I think it sounds natural. Because I'm trying to get out of the mind of knowing it's a sample there and listen for pure listening. When you get out of that space, yeah. Again, the better way to do it would be to actually have a sample of that tom by itself. That's the only way that you're going to really get the full gamut of it. Otherwise, you're just shooting in the dark with it. You know what I mean? So that's all we can kind of do with that, and just kind of work with it. But let's dig in a little bit deeper. Now, I've already got my reverb locked the way I like it. And it's just basically a plate that's sending a little bit from each one of that. And then I got it going to a parallel compressor. Now that I got it to a place where I like it listening, I added in my FN to just a little air on the top, little 2 dB. That's all it is really here, just top end EQ, and then a little bit of a parallel compression type situation added in there. And then that's all I've really added in. And this is where we're at now on the mix. Things are starting to cut through for me. All right, so feels good. I think I'm about done with these. I mean, the kick sounds really good. I really didn't have to do anything to the kick, so we really don't need anything on this channel. Just a little bit of VMR. That's just A little bit of saturation put on there. On the drum bus itself, I also have this. I like to put this on here. It's a nice little spreader. T-Rex quad imager, and any imager will work for that matter. And it's not even really doing a whole lot. It's just to widen the set out a little bit. And let me show you what I'm talking about. It just spreads it out just a little bit, gives it a more wider perspective. So if I bypass it, but if I bring it back in, just a little hair. So feeling good. I think I'm about done with these drums. I don't think there's anything else I need to do right now to the drums. Now we may come back once I start messing with all of the other elements and get myself something a little bit different. But for the most part, I'm kind of satisfied with where we are with the drums. I'll sit down, spend some more time listening to it, and make my decisions on there. But that's pretty much the lay of the land when it comes to mixing drums. This is pretty much the process. It's not the perfect process. It's not the only way to do things. It's just the way that I do things. And hopefully you were able to pull some value out of this and bring it in and use it in your own productions, own mixes, own recordings, all of the above. But that's all I got for you guys today. I appreciate you guys hanging out. We'll talk to you guys on the next one. Peace.
What up, guys? You know who it is. It's your boy, John Mike. I'm back again today. I'm excited to share with you a over 2-hour video that we have put together on just mixing drums. I'm talking mixing drums from some of the top engineers and producers in the industry. We're talking Cedric Thompson, Yosh, Blass. We got PJ Morton's engineer in there. We got Yaahn Hunter Jr. Heck, I even throw some stuff in there, some things that I've learned just from hanging around these guys over the years. So I'm excited to share this video with you, and I hope you enjoy this content. All right, let's jump in. Thank you for watching.
So what's happening